What if the universe speaks in two languages simultaneously? One is the language of mathematics, of spectral analysis and orbital mechanics, a precise, cold and magnificent tongue spoken by light itself and painstakingly translated by our machines. It tells us of objective reality, of the unyielding laws that govern the silent dance of worlds. The other language is far older, whispered in story, carved into rock, and carried in the rhythm of ceremony. It is the language of meaning, of prophecy, a mythic and deeply human tongue that seeks not to explain the cosmos, but to understand our place within it. For millennia, these two languages have flowed in parallel like two great rivers that water the same valley but never seem to meet. One is the river of empirical fact, the other the river of ancestral wisdom. But what happens when a single extraordinary object appears in our sky and seems to speak both languages at once? What are we to do when a scientific discovery, a marvel of the modern age, bears an uncanny resemblance to an ancient and solemn warning? This is not a story of a collision of worlds, but of a collision of worldviews, a story that begins, as so many do, with a faint and unexpected glimmer in the deep, impartial dark. Before we can hear the whisper of prophecy, we must first listen to the hum of the machine. All across our planet, a new kind of eye is perpetually open, gazing into the heavens. These are not the eyes of poets or priests, but the cold silicon eyes of our digital sentinels. Robotic telescopes programmed with an unwavering mission to scan, to chart, to identify any and every object that moves against the stellar backdrop. They are our watchtowers on the cosmic shore, tirelessly mapping the celestial traffic, cataloguing the millions of rocky wanderers that share our solar system. Their purpose is profoundly pragmatic, born from a humbling awareness of our own vulnerability. They are searching for the next great impact, the civilization-altering threat that may one day come screaming from the void. This relentless vigil is the Asteroid Terrestrial Impact Last Alert System, or ATLAS. A name that evokes a mythological titan holding up the sky, now reborn as a network of automated observatories in Hawaii, Chile, and South Africa, a planetary defense system woven from algorithms and light. Night after night, ATLAS sifts through a deluge of data, a river of photons captured and converted into binary code. Its software is a master of pattern recognition, trained to spot the anomalous, the faintest smudge of light, where none was before the subtle shift that betrays an object on the move. Most of its discoveries are mundane, at least to the jaded eye of a professional astronomer. Another main-belt asteroid, another Jupiter family comet, catalogued and forgotten, a mere footnote in the immense celestial ledger. But on the 28th of December 2019, the system flagged something different. It was achingly faint, a barely perceptible ghost in the constellation Ursa Major. To the automated system, it was just another data point, an anonymous celestial transient. It was given the sterile clinical designation C, 2019Y4. The C for Comet 2019 for the year of its discovery, and Y4 to mark its place in the sequence of finds from that period. A name devoid of poetry, a label for a specimen. Yet, as astronomers around the world turned their more powerful instruments toward this faint apparition, the data began to tell a story that was anything but ordinary. The initial calculations of its orbit were perplexing. It was not following the gentle elliptical path of a native member of our solar system. Its trajectory was a dramatic sweeping arc, a hyperbola. This single mathematical curve transformed its identity entirely. A hyperbolic orbit is a one-way ticket. It meant this object was not one of our own. It was a tourist, a pilgrim, an exile from another star. It had been falling through the lonely, frozen interstellar darkness for an unimaginable length of time, a solitary traveller navigating the gulf between suns. Its journey may have lasted millions, perhaps even hundreds of millions of years, a silent testament to the vastness of the galaxy. Now, by sheer chance, its path had intersected with ours, a fleeting rendezvous in the grand cosmic scheme. This visitor was quickly reclassified, its name elevated to reflect its extraordinary origin, 3I, Atlas. The 3I standing for the third confirmed interstellar object ever detected by humanity. Suddenly, it was no longer a mere data point. It was a scientific sensation, a priceless messenger from a world we will never see. Astronomers were ecstatic. Here was a pristine sample of another solar system delivered directly to our doorstep. What secrets were locked within its icy heart? What could it tell us about the chemistry of its stellar birthplace, a place so distant we can only know it as a point of light? The object was a cosmic time capsule, a scientific treasure of the highest order. It became the focus of intense observation, every telescope that could be trained upon it, charting its progress as it plunged toward the sun. But as it drew closer, something else began to emerge. Not from the hard data of the astronomers, but from the global network of human conversation. A different kind of pattern recognition was at work, one driven not by algorithms, but by memory, story, and a deeply ingrained need to find meaning in the sky. To understand this second story, we must leave the sterile clean rooms of our observatories and travel to a different landscape, a place where the sky is not a laboratory to be studied, but a sacred text to be read. We must go to the high wind-swept mesas of northern Arizona, to the ancient lands of the Hopi people. For the Hopi time is not a straight line, but a series of worlds, a cycle of creation, corruption, and purification. They are a people who have lived in the same place for over 1,000 years, their villages clinging to the arid cliffs, as if born from the rock itself. Theirs is a culture built on a profound and intricate cosmology, a world view where every aspect of life, from planting corn to the turning of the seasons, is interwoven with the spiritual fabric of the universe. Their astronomy is not one of telescopes and spectrographs, but of sun-watching from ancient windows of horizon calendars, and of a deep symbiotic relationship with the cycles of the cosmos. For them, the sky is alive. It is populated not by inert balls of rock and gas, but by powerful spiritual beings, messengers, who act as intermediaries between the mortal world and the infinite creative force. They are the Kachinas. These are not gods to be worshipped, but spirits that embody the essence of all things, the clouds, the rain, the animals, the plants, and yes, the stars. They are the visible manifestations of a life force that flows through everything, and they appear to the Hopi during their ceremonies, their essence channeled by masked dancers in rituals of extraordinary beauty and complexity. Woven into the very core of this cosmology is a series of prophecies handed down through countless generations. These are not vague predictions of the future, but a kind of moral and spiritual roadmap, a set of warnings and instructions for how to live in balance with the world. The prophecies speak of a great arc of history of humanity passing through successive worlds, each destroyed when people ultimately stray from the path of harmony and fall into greed, corruption, and conflict. According to their tradition, we are now living in the fourth world, a period of great technological advancement, but also of immense spiritual peril. And the prophecies warn that this world too has a potential end. Its fate is tied to a sequence of 9 signs events that would herald a great turning point, a time of reckoning known as the Great Purification. For generations, Hopi elders have watched world events, seeing in them the unfolding of these signs, the land being crossed by iron snakes, the sky filled with cobwebs, the sea turning black. But it is the 9th and final sign that carries the most profound weight, the one that signals the imminent arrival of the purification. The prophecy states, "You will hear of a dwelling place in the heavens above the earth that shall fall with a great crash. It will appear as a blue star." This blue star, the prophecy explains, is not merely a star. It is a Kachina, a spiritual messenger. The blue star Kachina, also known as Saquasohuh, will come to signal the end of the fourth world as we know it. Its appearance is a final warning to humanity to correct its course, to abandon the path of destruction and return to a life of peace and spiritual connection to the earth. When the Kachina removes his mask during the final dance in the village plazas, the time of the great purification will be upon us. It is a deeply solemn and powerful prophecy, not a promise of apocalypse in the Western sense, but a cataclysmic transition, a painful but necessary cleansing that will sweep away the corrupt and pave the way for the creation of a peaceful fifth world for those who have remained true to the original spiritual path. For the Hopi, this is not ancient history or fanciful myth. It is a living, breathing reality, a cultural compass that has guided them for centuries, a sacred trust they hold for the benefit of all humankind. It is an unfulfilled promise, a final chapter waiting to be written in the sky. And so we have our 2 stories, our 2 languages. In one, we have 3 I, Atlas, an interstellar comet, a purely natural phenomenon, a piece of rock and ice from another star, its journey governed by the immutable laws of gravity. In the other we have the blue star Kachina Saquasohuh, a spiritual messenger whose arrival is a pivotal moment in the cosmic destiny of humanity. For all of history, these two narratives existed in separate realities, one in the journals of astrophysics, the other in the hearts of a Native American nation, until 2020. As Comet Atlas continued its journey into the inner solar system, it began to change. Warmed by the ever-increasing intensity of the sun, its frozen ices started to sublimate, erupting into a vast, glowing atmosphere called a coma, and observers, both amateur and professional, began to note its color. Under certain conditions, often enhanced by photographic equipment, the comet's coma glowed with a distinct and ethereal blue-green hue. This color is not uncommon in comets. It is the signature of diatomic carbon and cyanogen molecules being fluoresced by solar radiation, a simple matter of photochemistry. But to those who knew the old stories, this simple fact was anything but. A comet, a star with a tail arriving from a place we could not see, a visitor from the great unknown, and it was blue. The connection was electric, a spark that leaped across the chasm between science and myth. The news did not come from an academic journal or a university press release. It spread, as modern legends do, through the digital bloodstream of our interconnected world. On internet forums, on social media, in late-night conversations, the two stories began to merge. 3I, Atlas the scientific marvel, was being identified by people all over the world, with Saquasohuh, the blue star, Kachina, the harbinger of the Great Purification. The match seemed to many too perfect to be a coincidence. An object from a distant unknown star system, arriving on a unique once-in-a-species trajectory, appearing in our sky for the first time in recorded history, and it presented itself with a telltale blue glow. It was an ancient description being fulfilled by a modern discovery. This is where our journey truly begins. We are not here to ask whether a comet can be a Kachina. We are not here to prove or disprove a prophecy. To do so would be to miss the point entirely, to force one language to conform to the rules of the other. The real question, the one that resonates far beyond the fate of a single comet, is far more profound. Why do we do this? Why, in our age of unprecedented scientific certainty, do we find ourselves irresistibly drawn to the language of myth? What does this improbable intersection of advanced astronomy and indigenous wisdom reveal about our deepest human instincts, our search for meaning in a cosmos that science often paints as vast, impersonal, and indifferent? The story of 3I, Atlas, and the blue star Kachina is a mirror held up to our modern world. It reflects our anxieties about the future, our yearning for connection to something larger than ourselves, and our eternal struggle to reconcile what we can measure with what we can feel. We will follow both paths of this extraordinary story. We will journey into the heart of the science, exploring the violent and chaotic life of this interstellar visitor. And we will travel deep into the world of the Hopi to understand the ancient roots and the solemn meaning of the prophecy they have safeguarded for centuries. We are setting out to explore that mysterious, fertile ground where the river of fact and the river of meaning finally impossibly seem to merge. What if a story told for 1,000 years, a message passed down through generations in the heart of a continent, was not meant for the ear but for the eye? What if this ancient narrative was not a myth but a timetable waiting for its celestial counterpart to appear in the cold, silent theatre of space? We believe we are the discoverers, the ones who map the void and name its wanderers. But what if, for some, we are merely the last to read a message that was written long ago, a message carried on a trajectory of impossible speed and from an unimaginable distance, a message that begins with a faint smudge of light, an anomaly in the data, a ghost in the machine? Our story begins on August 30th, 2019. In the quiet hum of a mountaintop observatory in Hawaii, the Asteroid Terrestrial Impact Last Alert System, or ATLAS, was doing what it always does. It was conducting a silent robotic vigil, scanning the heavens for anything that might pose a threat to us, for the rogue rocks adrift in our cosmic neighborhood. It is a task of immense scale and microscopic detail, sifting through terabytes of data, for the faintest whisper of movement against the static backdrop of the distant stars. On that night, the system's sophisticated algorithms flagged something peculiar. It was not a menacing near-Earth asteroid, nor a familiar comet tracing its long looping path back towards the sun. It was just a whisper, a barely there smudge of light designated with the sterile poetry of science C 2019 Q4. Initially, it was just another data point, another candidate for follow-up observation, one of thousands. But as other telescopes turned their gaze, a startling and electrifying picture began to emerge from the meticulous calculations of orbital mechanics. This smudge was moving too fast, far, far too fast. An object born within our solar system is a prisoner of the sun. It is bound by gravity, its path a repeating elliptical dance, a cosmic loyalty oath it can never break. Whether a planet in its majestic, nearly circular sweep or a comet in its wild, elongated journey, it must eventually return. It is part of the family. This object, however, was different. Its trajectory was not an ellipse, it was a hyperbola. This is a word that in astronomy changes everything. A hyperbolic orbit is not a loop. It is a one-way street. It is the signature of an outsider, a traveler from the interstellar deep paying a brief fleeting visit before being flung back out into the unending darkness between the stars. The calculations were checked, rechecked, and confirmed by observatories across the globe. There was no doubt. C 2019 Q4 was an immigrant from another solar system. It was only the second such object we had ever detected in all of human history. The first, the enigmatic and bafflingly shaped Oumuamua, had shot past us in 2017. A fleeting enigma we only spotted as it was already leaving. It was a missed opportunity, a cosmic puzzle piece that tumbled away before we could get a good look. But this new visitor was different. We saw it coming. We had time to prepare, time to stare, time to question. The entire astronomical community buzzed with an excitement that is reserved for moments that fundamentally alter our perspective. For the first time, we had a chance to study a pristine artifact from another star's family, a relic carrying the chemical secrets of a place we may never reach. The object was given a new, more resonant designation, 3I, Atlas. The third interstellar object identified a messenger whose point of origin was a profound and captivating mystery. It was a scientific marvel, a puzzle box delivered to our doorstep from the void, and for some it was something more. Something long, long awaited. To understand that we must leave the sterile hum of the observatory and travel to another kind of vantage point. Not a place of glass and steel, but of earth and stone, of wind-carved mesas that stand like silent witnesses to the passage of millennia. Here in the high desert of northeastern Arizona live the Hopi, the peaceful people, whose culture is a deep, intricate tapestry woven from threads of ceremony, community, and a profound connection to the cosmos. Theirs is not a history written in books, but one that is lived, danced, and sung into existence, a worldview in which the physical and the spiritual are not separate domains, but two sides of a single vibrant reality. For the Hopi, time is not a straight line charging into the future, but a series of great cycles like the turning of a cosmic wheel. They believe we are currently living in the fourth world, a period of existence that, like the three that came before it, will eventually reach a time of culmination and transition. This transition is not to be feared as an apocalypse, but understood as a necessary purification, a great sorting that cleanses the world and prepares the way for the fifth world. It is a process guided by a sacred plan, and its arrival will be announced by a series of signs. The final and most important of these signs is a celestial one. At the heart of Hopi spiritual life are the Kachinas. These are not gods to be worshipped, but powerful spirit beings who act as intermediaries, carrying the prayers of the people to the Creator and returning with blessings of rain, fertility, and life. They are manifest in the world through sacred masked dances, where initiated members of the community embody the spirits in ceremonies that reaffirm the sacred covenant between humanity and the natural world. For generations, the Hopi elders have passed down the prophecy of the final harbinger, the one who will signal that the time of purification is at hand. He is Saquasohuh, the blue star Kachina. The prophecy states that when the blue star Kachina makes his appearance in the heavens, the great transition will be imminent. He is the cosmic go-ahead, the final signal that the world is about to change in a fundamental way. The details of this prophecy are as precise as they are poetic. It is said he will first be seen as a star visible to all, then he will come to dance in the plaza, a symbolic phrase for his movement and presence in our shared celestial home. And finally, in the culmination of the ceremony, he will remove his mask, revealing his true face and his true purpose. The unmasking of the Kachina is a moment of profound revelation, the stripping away of illusion to reveal an essential truth. For the Hopi, the coming of the blue star is not a simple astronomical event. It is the fulfillment of a sacred timeline, a moment when the physical cosmos aligns with the spiritual blueprint of creation, demanding a reckoning for humanity. Here, then, we have two stories born from two vastly different ways of knowing. One is a narrative of data of orbital elements and spectral analysis of an object named 3I, Atlas, hurtling through our solar system at over 100,000 miles per hour. The other is a narrative of spirit of prophecy and ceremony of a celestial being named Saquasohuh, whose arrival signals a world-changing purification. On the surface, they seem irreconcilable, the products of mutually exclusive realities. One is modern, technological and objective, the other is ancient, spiritual and symbolic. And yet, as astronomers around the world began to study the light from this interstellar visitor, details began to emerge that were so startling, so strangely resonant with the ancient Hopi prophecy, that to ignore them would be an act of willful blindness. The two stories, against all odds, began to converge on the same point of light in the sky. The first and most stunning point of resonance was the object's color. The name, the blue star Kachina, is explicit. As telescopes gathered more and more light from 3I, Atlas, they fed it into spectrographs, instruments that act like cosmic prisms, breaking light down into its constituent chemical fingerprints. What they found was that 3I, Atlas, was not just a rock, it was a comet. As it drew nearer to the sun, its icy body began to heat up, releasing a cloud of gas and dust, a classic cometary coma. And the dominant chemical signature within that cloud was a molecule called cyanogen. Cyanogen, a simple compound of carbon and nitrogen, is common in comets, but under the specific energetic bombardment of solar radiation, its molecules are excited and fluoresce, emitting light in a very particular set of wavelengths. They glow with a distinct ethereal blue-green hue. To the sensitive electronic eyes of our telescopes, and potentially to the naked eye, if it grew bright enough, 3I, Atlas, was quite literally a blue celestial object. The prophecy had named a color, and the cosmos, through this interstellar messenger, had delivered it. Then there was the dance. The Hopi said the Kachina would dance in the plaza. For an astronomer, the plaza is the plane of our solar system, the stage upon which the planets perform their gravitational ballet. 3I, Atlas's journey was anything but a straight line. It was a breathtaking performance of gravitational physics. Pulled by the immense power of our sun, its trajectory was a graceful, sweeping arc, a celestial choreography dictated by universal laws. It approached from high above the ecliptic plane, swooped down towards the sun, whipped around it in a tight, high-speed turn, and was then flung back out its path, a mirror of its entry. This was not the simple streak of a meteor. It was a prolonged, visible journey across our skies, a complex and dynamic passage through our planetary home. It was in the precise language of celestial mechanics, a dance with our star performed for any on Earth who cared to watch. The prophecy had described a motion, a ceremonial performance, and the object's hyperbolic orbit provided a stunningly literal interpretation of that very act. And finally, there was the most profound parallel of all, the unmasking. The prophecy said the blue star Kachina would remove his mask to reveal his true nature. What is the entire endeavor of modern astronomy, if not a methodical technological process of unmasking the universe? Every photon captured, every spectral line analyzed, is an act of peeling back a layer of mystery. With 3I, Atlas, this process was electrifying. We were not just looking at another piece of our own solar system whose composition is familiar to us. We were looking at a complete unknown. The light from its coma was a mask hiding the object's core truths, but through the science of spectroscopy we forced it to reveal its secrets. We saw the cyanogen, yes, but we also looked for water, for carbon monoxide, for the building blocks of life forged in a completely alien environment. We were in every meaningful sense removing the object's mask to understand its identity, its origin, its purpose. Each new piece of data was a revelation, a glimpse behind the disguise of distance and light. The ancient symbolic act of a spirit revealing its truth found its modern echo in the quiet, focused work of scientists trying to decipher the fundamental nature of a visitor from another world. This convergence presents us with a deeply unsettling and wonderfully provocative challenge. It forces us to hold two powerful ideas in our minds at once. On one hand, we have the rigorous, evidence-based framework of science. From this perspective, 3I, Atlas, is a natural phenomenon. Its orbit is a product of gravity. Its color is a product of chemistry and physics. Its existence is a confirmation of theories about the formation of other solar systems and the prevalence of interstellar objects. It is a magnificent coincidence, a chance alignment of random celestial mechanics with the folkloric traditions of one of Earth's many cultures. It is beautiful, it is fascinating, but it is ultimately without intent or message. It is simply matter in motion, obeying the cold, impartial laws of the cosmos. To believe otherwise from this viewpoint is to indulge in magical thinking, to project human meaning onto a universe that has none. But on the other hand, we have a tradition of immense antiquity and resilience. The Hopi worldview is not a relic of a primitive past. It is a sophisticated and coherent system of knowledge, honed over thousands of years of observation and spiritual practice. From this perspective, there are no coincidences. The universe is not a silent, meaningless machine. It is a living, intelligent system, and humanity has a crucial role to play within it. The arrival of a specific object matching a specific description at a specific time is not chance. It is communication. It is the fulfillment of a sacred pattern, a signpost on a journey that was mapped out at the dawn of creation. To dismiss this as mere folklore is an act of profound arrogance, a refusal to acknowledge that there may be other valid ways of reading the text of reality, other languages for interpreting the great mystery of existence. The foresight embedded in the prophecy, the precise color, the description of its motion, the idea of a revelation is difficult to dismiss as a lucky guess. It suggests a form of knowing that operates outside the boundaries of our current scientific paradigm, a deep intuition about the rhythms and cycles of the cosmos that we are only just beginning to appreciate with our technology. So, as 2019 drew to a close, and 3I, Atlas, journeyed ever closer to its rendezvous with our sun, humanity stood at a crossroads of understanding. The object itself was a point of unity, a single focal point for telescopes and traditions alike. But the interpretations of its meaning were worlds apart. For scientists, the excitement was building. This was their chance to unmask the visitor completely, to read its chemical story and learn something new about the galaxy we inhabit. They prepared for its closest approach, a moment of maximum brightness and maximum revelation, a chance to see the alien object in its full, albeit temporary, glory. For the Hopi and those who watched with them, the feeling was not one of scientific curiosity, but of solemn, world-altering anticipation. The final sign had appeared. The dance had begun. The purification was at hand. They were not waiting to find out what the object was made of. They were waiting to find out what it had come to do. Two narratives, one of matter and one of meaning, were tracking the same celestial traveler. As it blazed towards the heart of our solar system, the fundamental question hung in the balance, a question that would define its legacy. Was this simply a comet, or was it a Kachina? Was this a random encounter, or was it an appointment we have had for 1,000 years? The time for the unmasking was drawing near. The alert once sounded ricocheted across the planet, not as a siren, but as a quiet, urgent cascade of digital code. From the high arid plains of the Atacama to the volcanic peak of Mauna Kea, a silent command went out. A global symphony of instruments, each a masterpiece of human ingenuity, began a slow, deliberate pivot. These colossal steel and glass structures, our planet's eyes on the cosmos, were being redirected from their patient vigils of distant galaxies and nascent stars. Their new target was a single fugitive point of light, a phantom that had trespassed into our celestial neighborhood. 3I. Atlas was here, and the frantic race to understand it had begun. you must understand the monumental challenge this presented. Observing a comet from our own solar system is a familiar if complex dance. We know their orbits, their histories, their general composition. We can anticipate their behavior. But this was different. This was an ambassador from an unknown star, a cosmic castaway speaking a language we had yet to decipher. It was moving at a velocity that defied our local gravitational customs, a speed so immense that it was clear our sun's grip was only a temporary inconvenience to it. This was not a visitor staying for dinner. This was a bullet passing through the room. Every second of observation was precious, a fleeting opportunity to capture photons that had journeyed for perhaps 1,000,000 years through the interstellar void. The world's great observatories cleared their schedules, bumping long-planned projects in a rare unified consensus. Time on these instruments is a fiercely guarded commodity booked years in advance, yet for 3i Atlas the gates were thrown open. It was a testament to the profound significance of the event. We were for the first time face to face with a pristine sample of another solar system, and the entire astronomical community held its collective breath, desperate to capture its portrait before it vanished back into the unending dark. The first reports trickling in were confounding, laced with a strange, almost poetic anomaly. Telescopes are not just about magnification, they are about characterization. They are equipped with sophisticated instruments, spectrographs, that act like cosmic prisms, splitting the faint light of distant objects into their constituent colors, revealing their chemical fingerprints. And the fingerprint of 3i, Atlas, was painting a strange picture. The initial data, raw and uncorrected, hinted at something the astronomers' models hadn't prepared them for: a subtle but persistent excess of blue. In the cold analytical world of astrophysics, color is not an aesthetic choice. It is a profound diagnostic tool. It tells you about temperature, composition, and the physics of light itself. A reddish hue might suggest complex organic molecules, the stuff of life. A neutral greyish-white is typical for the water, ice, and dust we see in our own comets. But blue is the color of the exotic. It can be the sign of incredibly hot young stars, or the ethereal glow of specific ionized gases. In a comet, it was an outlier, a puzzle that demanded an immediate explanation. The first hypothesis was diatomic carbon, a simple molecule of 2 carbon atoms bonded together. When bathed in the sun's ultraviolet radiation, these molecules can fluoresce glowing with a distinctive blue-green light. This was a known cometary phenomenon, but the blue from Atlas seemed different, deeper, more pervasive. Another theory suggested a unique kind of dust in its coma, the vast, tenuous atmosphere surrounding the nucleus. Perhaps the dust grains were exceptionally fine, smaller than those in our native comets. If so, they would scatter sunlight in a specific way, a process known as Rayleigh scattering. It's the very same reason our own sky is blue, a phenomenon where shorter, bluer wavelengths of light are scattered more effectively by tiny particles. Could it be that this interstellar wanderer was composed of a fundamentally different kind of dust, a finer, more pristine powder forged in the winds of a star utterly alien to our own? The idea was tantalizing. It implied that the very building blocks of its home system were distinct from ours. Every observation, every photon collected, was another piece of this bewildering puzzle. The comet wasn't just a physical object, it was a ghost whispering secrets of its origin, and we were leaning in, straining to hear. While the world's scientific institutions were locked in this intense, data-driven pursuit, a completely different kind of observation was beginning to take place. It didn't happen in the sterile clean rooms of observatories or on the glowing screens of supercomputers. It started in the digital ether, on message boards, social media threads, and late-night video streams. It was a murmur at first, a stray connection made by a handful of people mining the depths of the internet for patterns. They saw the early press releases, the astronomers' notes about a strange bluish comet from beyond our solar system, and for them, it wasn't a scientific curiosity. It was a sign. Someone somewhere connected the image of this celestial anomaly with a fragment of ancient lore, a prophecy from the Hopi people of the American Southwest. The prophecy of the blue star Kachina. Suddenly the conversation began to shift. The comet was no longer just 3i, Atlas, a dry technical designation. It was being given another name, another identity, one steeped not in physics but in millennia of spiritual tradition. The prophecy speaks of a time of great purification for the earth, a period of immense turmoil and change. It foretells that the arrival of the ninth and final sign will herald this new era. That sign would be the appearance of a blue star, a spiritual being, a Kachina who would remove his mask in the plaza before the uninitiated. The parallels were for many too powerful to ignore. Here was an object described by scientists themselves as having an unusual blue coloration arriving from the vast unknown expanse, the heavens, and its appearance coincided with a period of unprecedented global upheaval, a time when humanity felt profoundly off balance. The comet's path, an unpredictable streak through our familiar celestial map, was seen as a metaphor for the unpredictable nature of our own times. It was the ultimate outsider, the great disruptor, arriving just when the old stories said it would. The idea spread like wildfire, a mimetic contagion fueled by the architecture of our modern world. Infographics appeared online, placing a Hubble image of a distant blue nebula next to the words of a Hopi elder. YouTube videos edited with dramatic music intercut news reports about the comet with explanations of the Kachina belief system. The comet's scientific name, Atlas, was itself reinterpreted. It wasn't an acronym for an asteroid survey. It was the Titan from Greek mythology who held the heavens on his shoulders, now arriving to shrug to initiate a great shifting. This emerging narrative was creating a profound tension. For the astronomers working tirelessly to plot the comet's trajectory down to the millimeter, this was a distraction, a frustrating fog of superstition, obscuring a magnificent natural phenomenon. They were trying to understand the comet's orbital mechanics, the precise gravitational choreography that brought it from its parent star to ours. They saw its path as a perfect, predictable hyperbolic curve, a testament to the immutable laws of celestial mechanics. Its perihelion, its closest approach to the Sun, was a calculated point in space and time, not a destined moment of spiritual revelation. They were measuring its albedo, the reflectivity of its nucleus, to gauge its size and composition. They were tracking its outgassing, the jets of sublimating ice and dust erupting from its surface as it warmed to understand its internal structure. Each piece of data was a hard-won victory in a battle against distance and time. The object was still incredibly far away, a mere pixel in even the most powerful telescopes. Extracting a reliable signal from the noise of Earth's atmosphere and the overwhelming glare of our own solar system was a monumental task. They were using every trick in the astronomical playbook, from adaptive optics that corrected for atmospheric turbulence in real time to long-exposure astrophotography that stacked hundreds of images to reveal the faintest of details. This was science at its most demanding, a slow, methodical assembly of facts to build a true picture of reality. But for a growing segment of the global population, the scientific data was secondary. The truth of the comet was not to be found in its spectral lines, but in its symbolic resonance. The story was simply better. It was more human. It offered meaning in a time that felt meaningless, a sense of cosmic significance in the face of chaos. The prophecy provided a framework, a narrative arc to what was happening both in the sky and on the ground. It transformed a random cometary encounter into a pivotal chapter in the human story, and that was an incredibly seductive idea. The two worlds, one of science and one of myth, began to collide in the most public of arenas. News articles about the comet's chemical composition would have comment sections filled with discussions of the Hopi purifier. Scientific press conferences intended to deliver dry updates on orbital parameters were hijacked by questions about prophecy. The tension was palpable. On one side, you had the empiricists, the people who trusted only in verifiable, repeatable observation. They saw a fascinating but ultimately natural object, a dirty snowball of ice and rock that had travelled a very long way. It was a unique opportunity to learn nothing more. On the other side, you had the interpreters, the people who believed that the universe communicates in a language of symbols and portents. For them, the comet's physical properties were merely the mask of the Kachina. The blue colour, its interstellar origin, its sudden appearance, these were not coincidences to be explained away by physics. They were the deliberate features of a messenger designed to be recognised. This wasn't a dirty snowball. It was a cosmic entity with an agenda, a harbinger. And then, just as these two narratives were solidifying, 3i Atlas did something entirely unexpected. It began to flicker. Astronomers monitoring its brightness, a process called photometry, noticed something was wrong. Comets are expected to brighten steadily as they approach the Sunday. The increasing solar radiation heats their surface, causing more ice to turn directly into gas, releasing dust and expanding the coma, which in turn reflects more sunlight. It's a predictable, elegant process, but 3i Atlas was not following the script. Its light curve, the graph of its brightness over time, became erratic. It would surge in brightness for a day or two, becoming far more luminous than predicted, only to suddenly and dramatically fade, sometimes becoming fainter than it was weeks earlier. This was not the behavior of a stable, cohesive object. This was the signature of something coming apart. For the scientific community, this was a thrilling, if bittersweet, development. The fluctuations were likely caused by violent fragmentation events. The nucleus, the solid core of the comet, was perhaps breaking up under the increasing thermal and gravitational stress of its solar encounter. Chunks of the comet could be carving off, exposing fresh, highly volatile ices to the sun, causing a sudden outburst of gas and dust, the surge in brightness. These new fragments would then drift away and the overall brightness would plummet. We were not just observing an interstellar visitor, we were potentially witnessing its death throes, a magnificent act of self-destruction played out on a cosmic scale. Each flare was a new clue, a chance to see inside the object, to analyze the composition of its pristine, newly exposed interior. But for those watching through the lens of prophecy, this erratic behavior was interpreted in a profoundly different way. The flickering was not a sign of death, but of life. The blue star was not disintegrating, it was awakening. The sudden flashes of light were a signal, a pulse, a celestial heartbeat growing stronger as it neared our world. The prophecy spoke of the Kachina unfastening his mask. Could these explosive bursts of light be just that? The outer mundane shell cracking open to reveal the true luminous spirit within. The comet's instability wasn't a sign of its physical weakness, but a demonstration of its transformative power, a shedding of its disguise, as it prepared to fulfill its ancient purpose. So here we stood at a remarkable crossroads, two parallel realities, both centered on the same point of light. One was built from the relentless accumulation of data of spectral lines and orbital elements, painting a picture of a fragile, fragmenting interstellar iceberg meeting its fiery end. The other was woven from ancient stories and modern anxieties, a narrative of a celestial purifier arriving to usher in a new and terrible age. Both communities watched the same sky with the same sense of awe, the same rapt attention, but what they were seeing could not have been more different. The comet, indifferent to our interpretations, continued its inexorable plunge toward the Sunday. It was shedding its secrets, whether through the cold language of physics or the burning poetry of myth. And as its light continued to pulse, to flare and fade in the deep black, it posed a question not just to our instruments, but to us. What do you choose to see when a stranger from a distant star comes knocking at your door? Do you see a messenger, or do you see a rock? And so we watched and we waited. Humanity for a fleeting moment was united in its upward gaze, a global congregation holding its breath for a visitor from an unknown shore. Every professional observatory with a view, every amateur astronomer in their backyard, every soul captivated by the promise of the heavens had their instruments and their hopes trained on that single accelerating point of light. The narrative we had built was reaching its crescendo. 3i Atlas was hurtling towards its perihelion, its closest, most intimate encounter with our Sunday. This was to be its moment of coronation. The intense solar radiation would superheat its nucleus, boiling away its ancient ices to unleash a spectacular sprawling coma, a turquoise halo that might become visible to the naked eye. For scientists, it was the ultimate interrogation. The sun's fire would force this interstellar messenger to finally confess its secrets, revealing the chemistry of its distant parent star system in the glorious spectrum of its tail. For those who saw the Kachina in its approach, this was the prophesied dance, the moment the blue star would burn brightest, a celestial beacon heralding a new and uncertain dawn. The anticipation was a tangible force, a current of electricity passing through the digital ether, and the quiet, dark places of the world. We were on the precipice of revelation, certain that what we were about to witness would be a spectacle for the ages, a definitive statement etched in light against the vacuum. We believed we knew the story. We were wrong. The first whispers of trouble were not a bang, but a subtle, unnerving silence. In the data streams flowing from mountaintop telescopes, something was amiss. The graphs that should have been climbing, tracing a sharp upward trajectory of brightness as the comet fell deeper into the sun's gravitational well, began to stutter. They plateaued. Then impossibly they began to dip. It was a statistical anomaly, the first astronomers thought. Perhaps a calibration error, a patch of atmospheric turbulence, a simple misreading of the data that would be corrected in the next observation run. But the next run confirmed it. And the next? The brilliant emissary, which should have been flaring into its most magnificent form, was inexplicably fading. The celestial herald was losing its voice just as it was about to speak. Panic, quiet, and professional began to ripple through the astronomical community. It was the kind of deep, frustrating confusion that arises when the universe refuses to follow its own established rules. Comets get brighter as they approach a star. This is a fundamental law of celestial mechanics, as reliable as gravity itself. Yet 3i Atlas was defying it. It was as if a firefly flying towards a bonfire began to grow dimmer instead of being illuminated by the blaze. The sharp, stellar point of light that had defined the comet's nucleus in high-resolution images started to soften. It elongated, smearing slightly like a drop of ink bleeding into paper. The crisp definition was gone, replaced by a worrisome fuzziness. The core, the very heart of the object, was losing its integrity. Then the first piece broke away. It was a clean, catastrophic fracture visible in the sequence of images as a smaller secondary condensation of light peeling away from the main body. Within hours another followed, and then another. What we were witnessing was not a coronation but an execution. The sun, the very star we hoped would illuminate our visitor, had become its tormentor. The immense gravitational forces, the relentless tidal pull of our star, were seizing the comet in an invisible grip. It was being stretched and squeezed, pulled apart by the sheer stress of its proximity to such a massive object. Simultaneously, the solar radiation, a relentless celestial blowtorch, was penetrating its surface. The ancient, pristine ices that had held it together for millions, perhaps billions of years of interstellar travel, were not just sublimating into a gentle gas, they were flash boiling. Pockets of volatile material deep within the nucleus were exploding, creating fissures and vents, compromising its structural integrity from the inside out. It was a crystalline lattice, built in the unimaginable cold between the stars, and we had dragged it into a furnace. The delicate frozen architecture of its home system could not withstand the violence of our own. The single nucleus became 2, then 4, then a dozen, a ghostly procession of fragments flying in loose formation. Astronomers watched helpless as their pristine object of study, their perfect time capsule from another world, disintegrated into a string of cosmic pearls before their very eyes. The once promising candidate for the brightest comet in decades was dissolving into a pale, ethereal smear against the black. The vibrant blue-green hue, the very colour that had sparked the connection to the Kachina, bled away. As the larger icy chunks broke apart, they exposed a dusty interior, and the comet's light shifted, becoming a faint, unremarkable white. It was the colour of dust, the colour of ghosts. The blue star was dead. In the sterile quiet of observatories and data centres, the initial wave of profound disappointment was swift and heavy. A once-in-a-generation opportunity had literally vanished. The hope of seeing a spectacular display of pointing to the sky and showing the world a traveller from afar was gone. But science, in its relentless pursuit of knowledge, is an expert at turning failure into opportunity. The death of 3i Atlas, while a theatrical tragedy, was a scientific goldmine. The disintegration was not an ending, it was an autopsy. And it was giving us access to something we had never seen before, the pristine, untouched interior of an interstellar object. When a comet remains intact, we can only study the gases and dust on its surface, the skin that boils off into space. But as 3i Atlas shattered, its core was laid bare. The fragments, each a miniature comet in its own right, began outgassing furiously and our spectrographs could now analyze the raw virgin material from its heart. This was the primordial stuff, the recipe of the nebula that had birthed its alien sun. We could measure the ratios of carbon monoxide to water ice, the presence of complex organic molecules, the very building blocks of another solar system with a clarity we had never dreamed possible. We discovered that it was extraordinarily fragile, far more so than the comets born in our own Oort cloud. It was a loosely bound rubble pile, a cosmic snowball packed together with the gentlest of force, suggesting it had formed in a much calmer, less violent region of its home system than where our own comets coalesce. This ghost, by coming undone, was telling us its life story. It spoke of a different kind of stellar nursery, a different way of building worlds. It was a messenger that had to destroy itself to deliver its most important message. The very act of its demise provided more valuable data than its survival ever could have. It was a fragile, fleeting visitor, a cosmic teardrop that evaporated in the heat of our gaze, and in that evaporation we found a universe of new questions and the first few precious answers about the worlds beyond our own. But outside the world of spectral lines and orbital mechanics, in the realm of myth and meaning, the narrative took a far more dramatic, far more paradoxical turn. For those who had pinned their hopes and fears on the arrival of the blue star Kachina, its disintegration should have been the end of the story. The sign had failed, the star had fizzled out, the prophecy was broken, and for a few days, a quiet confusion reigned. Had they been wrong? Was it all just a coincidence of colour and timing? But then a new interpretation began to surface, an idea that spread with the fervour of revelation. It was a rereading of the ancient texts, a deeper look into the oral traditions that had been passed down through generations. And what they found was astonishing. The prophecy, they realized, never promised that the Kachina would arrive as a permanent fixture in the sky. It never said it would blaze for months or years as a new star. The elders spoke of a sign, a herald who would come and dance at the great day of purification. It would reveal itself, and then crucially it would remove its mask before returning to the heavens. Suddenly the disintegration was not a failure of the prophecy, it was its ultimate, most terrifying fulfillment. The bright stellar object we had watched for months, that they argued, was the time's mask asterisk. The brilliant blue-green coma was the disguise, the beautiful face shown to the world. The disintegration, the violent, spectacular act of coming apart, was the Kachina removing that mask to show its true nature, its true purpose. It wasn't meant to be a star, it was meant to be a warning. Its ephemeral, transient nature was the entire point. It was a message about the fragility of our own world, a demonstration that even things that seem eternal and powerful can be undone in an instant. The prophecy wasn't about a new star in our sky, it was about the disappearance times of one. The sign was not its presence, but its profound and sudden absence. The ghostly trail of dust it left behind was seen as a tear shed for the world, a celestial lament for what was to come. The event shifted the interpretation from a passive sign to an active performative symbol. The Kachina had danced, and in its final self-destructive flourish, it had delivered its warning not as a proclamation but as a sacrifice. This interpretation was in many ways more powerful, more resonant than the original. A steady, predictable star could be normalized, absorbed into the background of the familiar sky. But a visitor that dramatically appears, promises a spectacle, and then violently immolates itself before your very eyes. That is a sign that cannot be ignored. It is an event that burns itself into cultural memory. The narrative had been pushed into territory no one could have foreseen. The death of the comet did not kill the prophecy. It gave it a terrifying new life, recasting it from a story of hope and change into a far darker omen of dissolution and consequence. We were now left with two parallel, utterly divergent realities, both born from the same cosmic dust cloud. For science, the ghost of 3I, Atlas, offered a wealth of data, a complex puzzle to be meticulously reassembled. Its death was a beginning, the start of years of research that would redefine our understanding of the traffic between the stars. We were sifting through the ashes of a traveller, learning the language of its homeland from the faint light of its remains. But for a growing part of humanity, the story was not one of chemistry and physics, but of eschatology. The puzzle was not scientific, but spiritual. They were not looking at data points. They were looking for meaning in the void it left behind. The fulfillment of the prophecy through disappearance had primed them, made them more certain than ever that the great purification was not a distant possibility, but an imminent reality. The departure of the blue star Kachina, they believed, was the first note in a symphony of upheaval. They were no longer watching the skies for a sign. They were now scanning the horizon, listening for the footsteps of the final dancer whose arrival the Kachina had foretold. We had looked to the heavens for a single unifying truth for a moment of shared wonder. Instead, we found a story that split in two, a cosmic event that became a mirror, reflecting back at us, our own deepest divisions, the unyielding search for empirical knowledge on one side, and the profound, unquenchable human need for meaning and destiny on the other. The celestial messenger had come and gone, and its final silent message had left us more divided and more uncertain than ever before. And so the great celestial performance ended not with a bang but with a whimper. The blue star Kachina, the harbinger poised to blaze across our skies, had instead dissolved into a ghostly smear. For millions who had watched its approach with a mixture of hope and trepidation, the silence that followed was deafening. The stage was empty. The protagonist had vanished. This should have been the end of the story, a cosmic footnote about an interstellar visitor that simply couldn't hold itself together. But the disintegration of Comet 3I, Atlas, was not an ending. It was a transfiguration. It was the moment a single object fractured into two entirely different, yet deeply intertwined realities. One, a scientific treasure trove born from celestial wreckage. The other, a myth that refused to die, feeding not on light but on interpretation. In the immediate aftermath, as the faint trail of debris continued its lonely arc, the world's great observatories pivoted from observation to autopsy. They were no longer tracking a comet, they were investigating a cosmic crime scene. The Hubble Space Telescope, a silent witness in orbit, stared into the fading glow, performing a remote dissection from millions of kilometers away. What it revealed was in its own way more profound than any spectacular light show. The fragments were not the solid rocky chunks you might expect from a shattered world. Instead, astronomers saw a delicate, almost ethereal procession of tumbling pieces, each one a loose congregation of ice and dust. They were described as fluffy aggregates, cosmic dust bunnies held together by the most tenuous of gravitational handshakes. This fragility was the first major clue. It told us that 3I, Atlas, wasn't forged in the violent, chaotic furnace of a young solar system like our own. It was likely born in a much calmer, colder environment, a gentle accretion in the dark, quiet suburbs of its parent star. It was less a celestial cannonball and more a cosmic snowflake, and as it neared the thermal blowtorch of our sun, it simply couldn't withstand the heat. The structure fell apart, and in doing so, it spilled its secrets. As the icy matrix holding the comet together sublimated, turning directly from solid to gas, it released the primordial materials that had been locked away for billions of years. This was the unprecedented scientific gift. We were for the first time getting a direct chemical analysis of the raw ingredients from another star's nursery. Spectrometers, instruments that can read the chemical fingerprints in light, detected the ghostly signatures of ancient molecules. We saw cyanogen, the same compound that gives some comets their eerie blue-green glow. We found evidence of diatomic carbon and a cocktail of other volatile ices. Each spectral line was a word, each molecule a sentence, and together they formed a message from an alien solar system. This was not just data, it was a form of interstellar archaeology. By studying the composition of these gases, we could begin to piece together the environment around the comet's long-dead parent star. We could infer its temperature, its chemical makeup, and the very processes that might one day give rise to planets and perhaps to life. The death of 3I, Atlas, provided a more intimate look at the building blocks of another world than we had ever achieved before. It was a ghost in the machine, a whisper from a place we can never visit, delivering a sample of its air, its water, its very essence directly to our instruments. For the astronomical community, the comet's failure to perform was its greatest success. It became a benchmark, a foundational data set for the new field of interstellar cometary science. Its legacy was cemented in peer-reviewed papers, in academic conferences, and in the refined models of how planetary systems form across the galaxy. The scientific story had found its resolution, a triumphant elegy of discovery. But down here on Earth, the other story, the human story, was just beginning its most fascinating chapter. Because while scientists were analyzing the comet's physical body, the rest of the world was grappling with its symbolic soul. The physical object had disintegrated, yet for many the prophecy had not. This is the great divergence, the point where the path of empirical evidence and the path of human meaning split into two separate realities. How is it that an event so clearly a physical failure, a non-arrival, could be interpreted by so many as a profound fulfillment? The answer doesn't lie in the stars. It lies within us. It lies in the very architecture of the human brain, an organ not designed for cosmic objectivity but for terrestrial survival. And a key feature of that design is our relentless, compulsive, and often beautiful quest for patterns. We are pattern-seeking animals. We see faces in the clouds, animals in the stars, messages in the static. This tendency, known as pareidolia, is a deep-seated evolutionary trait. Our ancestors, peering into the tall grass of the savannah, were far better off mistaking a rustling leaf for a lion than mistaking a lion for a leaf. The brain that sees a pattern where there is none survives. The brain that demands absolute proof before acting does not. We are the descendants of the imaginative, the cautious, the ones who connected the dots. And when we look to the heavens, we take this ancient software with us. Comet 3I, Atlas, was to an objective observer a collection of random astronomical data points. Its origin interstellar, its color a faint bluish green, its timing arriving during a period of global uncertainty, its fate disintegration. To a pattern-seeking mind, however, these are not random points. They are clues. They are ingredients waiting to be woven into a narrative. The interstellar origin wasn't just a physical trajectory. It became a sign of its otherworldliness, its special purpose as a messenger. The color wasn't just the result of sublimating cyanogen gas. It was the specific prophesied blue of the Kachina. The timing wasn't a coincidence of orbital mechanics. It was a divinely ordained intersection with a moment of human crisis. But what about the disintegration, the ultimate undeniable contradiction? This is where an even more powerful cognitive mechanism takes over confirmation bias. This is our tendency to favor information that confirms our pre-existing beliefs and to ignore or reinterpret information that challenges them. If you believe the comet is the blue star Kachina, its destruction is not evidence against the prophecy. Instead, the prophecy's framework is used to explain the destruction. The event is retrofitted to fit the belief, not the other way around. And so, new interpretations blossomed across the internet, in forums and in communities of faith. The comet didn't fail. Instead, it was said that the Kachina had removed its mask, fulfilling the part of the prophecy where the purifier reveals its true face before the great change. Its breaking apart wasn't a sign of weakness. It was a symbolic act of purification, the purifier shattering the old corrupt world to make way for the new. Each piece of contradictory evidence was masterfully absorbed into the narrative, making the belief system more resilient, not less. The story became an unfalsifiable prophecy. If the comet had arrived bright and whole, it would have been fulfillment. Since it broke apart, that too became fulfillment, just of a different, more esoteric kind. The belief was insulated from reality, protected by the infinite flexibility of human interpretation. But to understand the profound power of this story, we must go deeper than just cognitive biases. We have to ask why this particular pattern, this story of a celestial purifier, was so compelling to begin with. The answer is connected to one of humanity's oldest and most powerful narrative traditions, eschatology, the study of the end times. Virtually every culture, every religion, throughout all of recorded history has a story about the end of the world as we know it. From the Norse Ragnarök to the Christian apocalypse, from the Hindu Kali Yuga to the Aztec legends of the Five Suns, we are a species obsessed with our own conclusion. These stories, far from being simply morbid or terrifying, serve a vital psychological purpose. They impose order on a universe that often appears chaotic and meaningless. They promise that history is not just a random series of events, but a grand cosmic play, with a beginning, a middle, and a dramatic, meaningful end. They offer a sense of ultimate justice, a great reckoning where the wicked are punished and the righteous are rewarded. In a world of profound inequality and suffering, the idea of a cosmic reset, a purification, is an incredibly powerful and attractive concept. It provides hope, it provides meaning, it transforms our small, brief lives into a part of something epic and significant. Comet 3I, Atlas arriving from the void at a time of global pandemic, social unrest, and political division, did not create these eschatological feelings. It simply became the perfect shining vessel for them. It was a blank screen in the sky onto which we projected our deepest anxieties and our most fervent hopes. It was a celestial anchor for a free-floating global sense that things were broken, that we were living at the end of an era, and that some form of cleansing was not only inevitable but necessary. This phenomenon is not new. In 1997, Comet Hale-Bopp, a truly magnificent great comet, became tragically linked to the Heaven's Gate cult, whose members believed a spaceship hiding in the comet's tail was coming to take them to a higher level. For them, the comet's scientific reality was irrelevant. It was a symbol, a vehicle for their own unique eschatology. More recently, the 2012 phenomenon, tied to a misinterpretation of the Maya long count calendar, saw millions worldwide contemplating the end of the world. Every solar flare, every earthquake, every strange weather pattern that year was seen by some as a sign, a precursor to the final event. The human need to find cosmic significance in celestial events is a constant, a rhythm that beats throughout our history. The sky has always been our ultimate canvas for meaning. The stars were our first gods, our first calendars, our first maps. We are hardwired to look up and wonder, to seek connection with the vastness above us. And in the 21st century, even with all our scientific knowledge, this ancient instinct has not vanished. It has simply adapted. So the story of 3I Atlas's aftermath becomes a tale of two realities, both valid within their own frameworks. In one reality, a fragile, icy artifact from another star system entered our own, was analyzed by our technology, and gave us priceless insights into the formation of worlds. It was a story of matter, energy, and the relentless pursuit of knowledge. In the other reality, a messenger of prophecy arrived at a pivotal moment in human history, its appearance and its very disintegration, confirming a sacred ancient narrative of purification and change. It was a story of spirit meaning and the relentless pursuit of hope. One is not necessarily right and the other wrong. They are two different ways of being human, two different toolkits for making sense of an impossibly large and mysterious cosmos. Science gives us a map of what the universe times is asterisk. Mythology gives us a map of what the universe times means asterisk. The disintegration of Comet 3I, Atlas, didn't destroy a prophecy. It revealed the immense, unbridgeable, and yet utterly human gap between those two maps. The physical remnants of the comet, now a scattered cloud of dust and ice, continue their journey through our solar system, forever changed by their encounter with our Sunday. They are a ghostly testament to the interstellar traveler that once was, and the myth of the blue star Kachina, forever changed by its encounter with the comet, has now been absorbed into our modern folklore, a powerful testament to our unending search for meaning in the sky. The comet is gone, but the questions it raised, both about the distant stars and about ourselves, continue to orbit within our collective consciousness, waiting for the next messenger from the deep. And so the celestial messenger fell silent. Its brief, spectacular reign in our skies had ended not with the triumphant blaze of a new dawn, but with a quiet, inexorable surrender to the fundamental laws of the cosmos. The blue-tinged phantom, once a beacon of prophetic speculation, had been reduced to a diffuse, ghostly smear of dust and forgotten ice, its constituent parts continuing on their lonely trajectory, no longer a cohesive body but a funeral procession for an object that never was. The final data streams from our observatories painted a definitive, if somewhat melancholic, portrait of its demise. 3I, Atlas, was not slain by some cosmic battle or divine intervention. It was simply fragile. We had watched it journey for untold millennia from the cold, dark cradle of another star, a pristine snowball of primordial material, a time capsule from a solar system we will never know. This interstellar pilgrim carried within its frozen heart the chemical fingerprints of its alien birthplace, a tantalizing prize for our spectrometers and a source of boundless scientific wonder. But that very same composition, so precious and ancient, was also its fatal flaw. It was not a dense, hardened rock like the asteroids that haunt our own cosmic neighborhood. It was a loose agglomeration, a celestial dust bunny bound together by exotic ices, a structure more akin to a mound of loosely packed snow than a solid cannonball. Its journey through the interstellar void had been a gentle one, a long, cold sleep. But the inner solar system is no place for quiet slumber. It is a realm of savage, unrelenting violence. As 3I, Atlas, plunged towards our sun, the gentle warmth it had sought became a celestial blowtorch. The sun's radiation, a torrent of high-energy particles and photons, began to bombard its surface with an intensity it had never before experienced. The ancient ices, stable for eons in the deep freeze between stars, began to sublimate with explosive force, turning directly from solid to gas. These jets of vapor erupting from its core acted like chaotic rocket thrusters, sending the comet into an unstable, wobbling spin. We saw it in the data, a slight, almost imperceptible tremor at first, a flicker in its light curve that hinted at the immense stresses building within. Imagine a block of ice riddled with fissures suddenly thrown into a blast furnace. The outer layers flash into steam, creating pressures that tear at the internal cracks, widening them, propagating them deeper and deeper into the core. This was the fate of 3I, Atlas magnified on a planetary scale. The very forces that gave it a magnificent ethereal coma of gas and dust, the very activity that made it glow with that mesmerizing blue-green hue, were the engines of its own self-destruction. It was in a sense being devoured by its own beautiful light. The gravitational grip of the sun, a force that dictates the elegant dance of planets, became a monstrous tidal force for our fragile visitor. It stretched and squeezed the comet, pulling it in different directions, simultaneously exploiting every microscopic weakness in its loosely bound structure. The wobble became a violent tumble. The internal fissures, stressed by the sun's gravity and ripped open by outgassing jets, finally fractured completely. The end came not as a single dramatic explosion, but as a cascade of fragmentation, a slow, crumbling disintegration. Our telescopes, which had once tracked a single point of brilliant light, now saw a series of smaller, fainter sparks, each one a shard of the original core, drifting apart like the wreckage of a shipwreck scattered upon a dark ocean. The great interstellar comet, the potential harbinger, had dissolved. The scientific verdict was unambiguous, written in the cold language of physics and chemistry. 3I Atlas was a fascinating, incredibly rare, but ultimately natural phenomenon. Its life and death were governed by the same predictable forces that shape every object in the universe, from the smallest grain of dust to the most massive of stars. There was no mystery left to solve, no hidden intelligence to decode. The book of the comet was closed. And yet for the Hopi, the story was just beginning, because while the object itself had vanished from our view, the idea it represented, the symbol it had become, did not dissolve along with its icy core. In the high desert mesas of Arizona, the disintegration of the comet was not seen as an invalidation. Far from it. For a tradition that understands the world through cycles of creation and purification, of being and becoming the physical form of a celestial messenger, is secondary to its message. The prophecy of the blue star Kachina was never about the geological resilience of a specific rock. It was about a sign in the heavens, a catalyst for change, a moment of profound reflection for humanity. The crucial element was its appearance, its arrival as a distinct blue-hued visitor, a condition 3I, Atlas, met perfectly. To try and apply our scientific metrics of success or failure to the prophecy is to fundamentally misunderstand its purpose. Science seeks a singular objective, falsifiable truth. It asks, what is this object made of? What is its trajectory? Why did it break apart? It seeks to demystify the universe, to drain it of ambiguity, and to render it into a set of predictable, understandable equations. Its power lies in its ability to tell us how the cosmos works. Prophecy, on the other hand, operates in a completely different domain of human experience. It is not concerned with the chemical composition of a comet's coma. It is concerned with the spiritual composition of the human heart. It asks, What does this sign mean for us? How should we live our lives in response to it? What must we purify within ourselves and our communities? Its power lies in its ability to tell us times our lives matter within the finite cosmos. The disintegration of 3I, Atlas, when viewed through this symbolic lens, can be seen not as a failure, but as a message in itself, a metaphor of profound and unsettling power. What is our world, after all, but a fragile body bound by the delicate forces of ecology, community, and spirit? Like the comet, our civilization is ancient, carrying the memory of its past. Like the comet, we are journeying through a cosmos that can be both nurturing and hostile. And like the comet, we are now facing forces, climate change, social division, spiritual decay, that threaten to tear us apart, to fracture our core, and scatter us into disconnected fragments. Could the crumbling of the blue star Kachina in the sky be a warning, a celestial reflection of our own potential for self-destruction if we fail to heed the call for change? This is a question that spectroscopy cannot answer. No telescope, no matter how powerful, can measure the symbolic weight of an event. This is the great divergence, the point where two powerful ways of knowing the universe, science and tradition, arrive at the same event but walk away with entirely different truths. Science looked at 3I, Atlas, and saw a failed comet. A fascinating object, to be sure, one that will fill scientific journals for decades, but ultimately a transient body that succumbed to the predictable physics of the solar system. It was a story of matter and energy. The Hopi tradition looked at the very same light in the sky and saw a successful prophecy. The sign appeared as promised. The warning was delivered. The physical fate of the object was merely the final punctuation mark on a sentence that had been spoken. It was a story of meaning and responsibility. To say one is right and the other is wrong is to commit a category error, like using a thermometer to measure the beauty of a sunset. They are not competing for the same territory. They are mapping different aspects of the same infinite reality. One map, the scientific one, is drawn with the tools of mathematics and observation. It is a map of the physical universe of cause and effect of objective reality. It allows us to build spacecraft to predict eclipses, to understand the life cycle of a star. It gives us power over the material world. The other map, the one drawn from prophecy and spiritual tradition, is created with the tools of metaphor, story, and ceremony. It is a map of the human soul, of purpose, of subjective experience. It provides a moral compass, a framework for community, and a way to navigate the turbulent waters of our own hearts. It gives us meaning within the material world. For centuries, we have been conditioned to believe that we must choose between these two maps, that one must supplant the other. But the story of 3I, Atlas, and the blue star Kachina suggests a different possibility. It suggests that we need both. We are, after all, creatures of profound duality. We are star stuff animated by the same physical laws that disintegrated a comet. But we are also story stuff beings who crave meaning, who look up at the night sky not just to measure but to wonder. This deep instinctual need to find patterns to connect our small lives to the grand celestial drama is one of the most fundamental aspects of human consciousness. It is the engine of myth, the spark of religion, the soul of art. It is even in its own way the foundation of science itself. What is a scientific theory if not an elegant pattern we have discovered within the chaos of the cosmos? The search for the blue star Kachina in the fleeting light of a comet from another star was not an act of foolishness or wishful thinking. It was an expression of this essential human impulse. It was an attempt to weave a thread of meaning between the ancient wisdom of the earth and the silent, startling mysteries of the void. We sought a connection, a sign that our existence is noted by the universe, that the heavens are not indifferent to the human struggle, and what we found was perhaps more profound than a simple one-to-one match. We did not find a divine messenger, a solid, indestructible harbinger of a new age. Instead, we found a mirror. We found a fragile, beautiful, and ephemeral visitor that blazed into our awareness for a breathtaking moment, reminded us to look up, and then fell apart under the immense pressures of its environment. The universe did not send us an answer. It sent us a question not about the destiny of the stars, but about our own. Will we be like the comet, a transient flash of brilliance that ultimately disintegrates, leaving behind only a faint trail of dust for future generations to puzzle over? Or will we learn to become something more resilient, something more cohesive? Will we heed the warnings, whether they are written in the precise data of climate science or the symbolic language of ancient prophecy, and change our course? The blue star Kachina, the real one, the one described in the Hopi tradition, is not an object but a purifier. Its role is to shake the world, to force a reckoning between the path of destruction and the path of balance and harmony. 3i, Atlas, the physical object has fulfilled its scientific destiny. It arrived, it was observed, it was measured, and its story is now etched into the annals of astronomy. But the event, the cultural moment of its passing, has perhaps kick-started the very purification the prophecy describes. It forced us to look at the sky, to talk to one another, to place our most advanced scientific instruments alongside our most ancient spiritual traditions. It compelled us to confront these two powerful parts of ourselves, the part that calculates orbital mechanics and the part that yearns for cosmic meaning. The true match was never between a piece of ice and a specific line of text. It was the resonant frequency struck between a celestial event and the human heart's need for a story. The comet was the tuning fork, and we all of us were the instrument that began to vibrate in response. It reminded us that the universe is not just a collection of lifeless objects governed by cold equations. It is a canvas, and we are the artists who paint our search for meaning upon it. The dust of 3i, Atlas, now continues its journey, an invisible spectre moving through the dark. Its light has faded from our skies, but its legacy is only now beginning to unfold. It has become a permanent part of our story, a cosmic fable for a technological age, a tale that reminds us that knowledge without wisdom is hollow, and that a universe without a sense of wonder is a profoundly empty place. We have looked through the lens of the telescope and seen the intricate machinery of the cosmos. We have listened to the whispers of prophecy and felt the deep currents of human spirituality. The two views do not cancel each other out. They bring the universe into a stunning three-dimensional focus. Having witnessed this profound intersection of two worlds, having seen how a single point of light can illuminate both the vastness of space and the depths of the human soul, we are left with the ultimate question. What do we do now? Where do we, a species, caught between the silicon chip and the sacred stone, go from here? And so the celestial messenger fell silent. Its brilliant turquoise heart, which had travelled for untold millennia from the deepest chasms of interstellar space, could not withstand the intimate caress of our sun. It did not arrive as a triumphant herald, a blazing harbinger in our skies. Instead, 3i, Atlas, offered us a different kind of revelation, one written not in fire but in fragility. It dissolved into a ghostly train of cosmic dust, a final shimmering exhalation that has now dispersed among the planets, becoming once more a part of the quiet, swirling background of our solar system. The spectacle we had anticipated never came, but its legacy, its true purpose in our story, was perhaps never about a grand performance. Its purpose was to make us look up, and in doing so, to make us look inward. Our journey together began with the thrill of discovery, a single point of light that defied its origins, an alien wanderer in our own cosmic neighborhood. We followed the scientists as they worked tirelessly decoding its secrets from millions of miles away. Through their powerful telescopes and spectrographs, we learned of its strange and beautiful chemistry, the cyanogen and diatomic carbon that painted it an ethereal blue. We traced its impossible trajectory, a hyperbolic arc that screamed of origins far beyond our sun's gentle grasp, a path that would carry it through our system only once in the lifetime of this universe. Science gave us the grammar of this visitor, the precise, elegant language of physics and chemistry. It was a story of gas and ice, of orbital mechanics and solar radiation, a magnificent, intricate, and wholly material narrative. We learned times what times it was, times where, times it came from, and times how times it behaved. Yet running parallel to this empirical pursuit was another story, a current of meaning flowing from a much deeper, more ancient river of human experience. This story was not born in an observatory but was carried for generations in the high desert mesas of the American Southwest. It was a story whispered in the kivas, chanted in ceremonies, and woven into the very fabric of the Hopi way of life. The prophecy of the blue star Kachina. We listened to the elders, their words carrying the weight of 1,000 years, as they described a sign that would precede a great purification, a time of profound change for all humanity. They spoke of a messenger blue in its light that would dance in the heavens, and when it removed its mask, the world would be irrevocably altered. A story not of chemical composition, but of cosmic communication. A narrative not of orbital velocity, but of spiritual destiny. Here, in the space between these two powerful narratives, lies the heart of our exploration. It would be simple, almost too easy, to dismiss the connection as mere coincidence, a random alignment of a celestial event with a pre-existing belief system. Science, in its rigorous pursuit of objective truth, rightfully demands evidence that transcends correlation. It would point out correctly that human history is filled with comets and portents, that our species has always projected its hopes and fears onto the canvas of the night sky. Our brains are, after all, pattern-matching machines of exquisite sophistication. We seek meaning as instinctively as we seek warmth and shelter. To find a link between a blue comet arriving during a time of global pandemic, a time of undisputed upheaval and purification, and an ancient prophecy foretelling just such an event is perhaps only natural. It is what we do. We are the universe's storytellers. But to stop there, to file this remarkable resonance away under the label of coincidence or apophenia, is to miss a deeper, more profound truth about the nature of knowledge itself. It is to ignore the value of the question that 3I Atlas forced us to ask: what does it mean to know something? Is a spectrographic analysis of a comet's coma the only valid form of knowledge about it? Or does the meaning a culture ascribes to it, the role it plays in their understanding of the cosmos and their place within it, also constitute a form of knowing? This is not to suggest that one form of knowledge should replace the other. That is a false dichotomy, a sterile argument that impoverishes us all. A spectrometer cannot tell you how to live a life in balance. A prophecy cannot calculate the escape velocity of a comet. The two are not in competition, they are in conversation. The scientific narrative provides us with a framework of incredible power, one that has allowed us to chart the universe, to understand the life cycle of stars, and to trace the origins of the very atoms that make up our bodies. It is a story of magnificent scale and breathtaking detail. It is the story of the cosmos as a grand physical mechanism governed by laws that we can, with patience and ingenuity, come to understand. This perspective gives us context. It grounds us in a physical reality that is vastly larger and older than our species can truly comprehend. It reveals the humbling truth that we are inhabitants of a tiny, fragile world, adrift in an ocean of unimaginable emptiness and energy. It is a perspective that fosters a sense of awe based on the sheer, unadulterated facts of existence. It is the knowledge of the mind, the Hopi narrative, and indeed the wisdom traditions of indigenous cultures the world over, offers a different lens. It is a framework built not on external observation and measurement, but on internal experience and generational memory. It speaks a language of symbolism, of relationship, of responsibility. The cosmos in this view is not a cold, indifferent mechanism, but a living, breathing entity with which we are in constant dialogue. A star is not merely a ball of fusing hydrogen, it is an ancestor. The Earth is not a collection of resources, she is our mother. A blue comet is not just a dirty snowball of frozen gas and rock. It could be a messenger, a sign, a catalyst. This perspective gives us meaning. It weaves us into a cosmic tapestry of interconnectedness, reminding us that our actions have consequences that ripple out far beyond our immediate lives. It is a perspective that fosters a sense of awe based on our intimate participation in a sacred whole. It is the knowledge of the heart. What Comet 3I Atlas offered was a rare and precious opportunity to hold both of these truths in our hands at the same time. Its sudden appearance, its unique coloration, its arrival at a moment of profound global crisis, it all served as a cosmic invitation, an invitation to step outside of our siloed ways of thinking and to witness the potential for a grander synthesis. Science told us the comet was a visitor from another star system, a literal alien. It was a piece of the galaxy beyond our own, bringing with it the primordial materials from a different corner of the cosmos. It was, in the most literal sense, a messenger from the unknown. The Hopi prophecy told us the blue star would be a messenger from the Creator, a sign that we have strayed from the path of balance and must find our way back. Are these two statements really so far apart? One speaks in the language of matter and energy, the other in the language of spirit and purpose. But both identify the object as a profound other, a catalyst from beyond our immediate experience, arriving to deliver a message of profound importance. The message of science was a lesson in humility. It reminded us that the universe is wild, and its travelers do not always conform to our expectations. We anticipated a glorious show, but the cosmos delivered a lesson on the ephemeral nature of all things. The comet's disintegration was not a failure of the spectacle. It was a deeper teaching. It showed us that even objects forged in the cold darkness of interstellar space, survivors of journeys lasting millions of years, are subject to change and dissolution. It was a poignant, silent reminder of the delicate balance of forces that governs all existence, from the mightiest star to the briefest human life. In its quiet vanishing, it reflected our own fragility back at us. The message of the Hopi wisdom was a call to action. The prophecy is not about passively watching a sign in the sky and waiting for the world to end or be magically reborn. It is a deeply participatory event. It is a warning that the purification is a process driven by our own choices, by our disconnection from nature and from each other. The appearance of the sign is not a verdict, it is an opportunity. It is a chance to remove the mask, to see the world and ourselves with clarity, to shed the destructive habits of greed and conflict, and to consciously choose a new path. In this light, the comet's arrival during a pandemic that forced the entire world to pause to confront its vulnerabilities and to question the very foundations of its societies takes on a staggering symbolic weight. The world, in a very real sense, was being unmasked. The systems we had built, the inequalities we had ignored, were laid bare for all to see. This is the space where respect for diverse forms of knowledge becomes paramount. To truly understand our place in the cosmos, we need both the telescope and the prayer stick. We need the equations that describe gravity and the songs that celebrate the harvest. One gives us the power to navigate the physical universe, the other gives us the wisdom to navigate our own humanity. To dismiss one in favor of the other is to choose to see with only one eye. It is to hear only one half of a beautiful, complex harmony. Science can prevent us from falling into superstition, grounding our understanding in testable reality. But wisdom traditions can prevent us from falling into a spiritual void, reminding us that knowledge without meaning, data without context, is a hollow achievement. They remind us that the universe is not just something to be studied, but something to be experienced, a home in which we have a vital and sacred role to play. So where does this leave us? In the faint receding wake of a disintegrated interstellar comet, it leaves us with the enduring power of wonder. 3i, Atlas, did not provide a definitive answer to the question of whether it was the blue star Kachina. It couldn't. That was never its role. Its role was to pose the question, to serve as a celestial mirror, reflecting our own deepest yearnings for connection and meaning. It revealed the powerful, ancient, and deeply human impulse to read our story in the stars, to find a correspondence between the macrocosm above and the microcosm within. This impulse is not a weakness of our intellect. It is the very source of our art, our music, our philosophy, and even our science. The drive to understand, to find our place, to feel a sense of belonging in this vast and mysterious cosmos is the noblest of all human endeavors. The search continues. It continues in the deep space probes we send to the outer planets, in the powerful observatories that peer back to the dawn of time, and in the meticulous work of scientists piecing together the story of the universe, one data point at a time. And it continues in the quiet ceremonies of indigenous peoples, in the sacred stories passed down through generations, and in the profound wisdom that teaches us how to walk in balance upon the earth. These are not divergent paths. They are two trails leading up the same mountain, offering different vistas, but ultimately ascending toward the same summit, a deeper, richer, and more complete understanding of the magnificent reality we are all privileged to be a part of. The sky above us is not empty. It is a library of ancient light filled with stories waiting to be read. Some are written in the language of physics, in the spectral lines of distant stars and the gravitational waves of colliding black holes. Others are written in the language of myth and prophecy in the constellations that have guided our ancestors and the celestial events that have marked turning points in our collective history. Comet 3I, Atlas, the alien wanderer, the fleeting blue spark, was a single extraordinary chapter in that great cosmic book. It has now turned its own page, its physical form gone forever. But the questions it stirred within us, the conversations it started, and the bridge it illuminated between two worlds of knowing that light remains. It is up to us now to carry it forward, to continue looking up, and to never ever stop asking what it all means. The universe is speaking. Our greatest challenge and our greatest adventure is to learn how to listen,